moving forward, but I don't want you to be lost. That is why I am emphasizing that every lecture I'm trying to build the concept as I go forward. Every concept that I talk about now, have you started? Every concept that I talk about every week, I will be making it complex as I go forward. And it's not going to be complex if you have been following. I don't want you to be lost. So if you have not been following the previous one, it is highly recommended that you follow through. Try to look at the resources. I make sure that the resources is as clear as possible. We have like 3 resources that we can go on to. We have the blog, we have the YouTube channel. Yeah, I think 2 like that. So, and I hope it is clear enough for you to follow through. But if you have questions, of course, you can always ask questions via the blog. I think there is a kind of a question that you can type there. I will see it. Or you just send personal question on the channel of the Outlook. I think we have Outlook channel. I'm not sure. But it's highly recommended that you follow through. So last week we started a concept, and we have done a lot of them. And this building block, they are the most important concepts that will help us write the Python code that we will use to solve our machine learning or data science problem. And last week we have dealt with the 2 aspects of it. I think we started with data type, and also we dealt with variable in our previous class. We explained the concept of variable in detail. After that, we talked about data type. We solved some questions that will help us demonstrate what we call variable. How do we use variable? Variable is like a bag. I'm sure if you go to the last lecture, it will be clearer. And the most important thing that I want us to get through this course is that I want us to be able to look at questions, and even if we can't solve it at first, because programming question takes time for you to be able to solve it. Even if you can't solve it, you will have idea. If you are even going to use ChatGPT, you will have idea what ChatGPT is saying. You'll be able to go through it. So what I have decided to do last week was that I have questions that will implement the concept that I talked about in the class. Then the question, I make sure we try to write what we call an informal interpretation of the questions, which we call pseudocode in programming language. So after we have written the informal interpretation, for those of us in class the previous class, then we try to code it. And the first one we did was we write a calculator that will bring out even numbers, and we explain the concept of even numbers. How are we going to identify even numbers? So this concept was explained in previous class. So I would strongly suggest that we go through it. I also dealt with these logical operations. We dealt with it last class, but I will be moving to another concept today. But today I will take it a step further by, after we have written the pseudocode, we brainstorm together. We try to solve the question together. The next thing is that I'm going to code it out. I will not be giving the code to you now. I will demonstrate the code for you to see. But I want you to, understand what I'm writing before I write. So that's going to be the 2 ways that we are going to approach it today. Because last week, what we just did is that I interpreted the question, then I, told you to code it out. But that might be a little bit challenging for someone that is just starting out programming concept. So, but today, we will try to implement minimum, a calculator that can identify minimum numbers between 3 digits. So let's try that. We are given build a calculator to return the minimum of 3 given digits. So I want us to think through the question together before we code anything, so that we will know the logic before we give computer to solve it for us. So the question says that we should build a calculator that will calculate or tell us that one of the 3 digits given to us is the minimum. So let's assume that we are given the figure, we are given this number 1, 2, and 3. We know this number, of course, but let's assume we don't know that 1 is the smallest here. So how do we think about comparing each of the numbers to identify that one of them is the least? Let's think through it. If I want to compare if these numbers are small, the first thing I will think of is, okay, look at the first number. The first number is 1. Then I will compare it with the second digit. Is it less than the second digit, for instance? If you are doing this first comparison with the second number, for this number to be the smallest, still you have to compare it with the third digit. Do you understand what I'm saying? The first number, for me to establish that it is the smallest, I have to make the comparison between that first number with the second and also the first number with the third. So what I will do is that compare the first number, is it less? This symbol is called less than. We talked about this in previous class. This one is called less than, which is it less than 2? Then we have to use something here. This one is an operator in any programming language. It means that hand is an action that tries to bring about conjugation. If you are using and in programming language, the two sides of the operation has to be true before you have true. I will explain further as I go forward. So 1 is less than 2 and 1 less than 3. The meaning of this and is that this one must be less than 2 and it must be less than 3 before you can say 1 is less. It means that these two conditions, this one has to be true, this one has to be true because of this and. That's the first thing. So if I do this for the first number, of course, I will also repeat the same step for the second number and the same step for the third number. Okay, so we have 1 to be the minimum here. Then we can say minimum is 1, for instance. If this holds true, or you have the situation where 2 is less than 1, what do I do again? And 2 is less than what? 3. Then you can say your minimum is 2. Then you do the same operation for the third number. 3 is less than 1 and 3 is less than 2. Then your minimum is 3. So this is a way, or this is one of the approaches we can use to solve this problem. So let's try and code it. Do you understand this logic? I'm just comparing the first number with the remaining two numbers. So if the condition holds true for the first part, which is if this is true, at the same time, this is also true, then that is the only time I will say 1 is true. Then you can see here I said or. It means that is either this one hold true or this one hold true. At the end of the day, it is only one digit that will be returned as the minimum. Do you understand? I want to go to coding now before I move. Do you understand what I've just done? So I want to move to demonstrating it on code now. So let's take for example that we are given 3 digits. I want to write a prompt that will collect 3 digits from user. So let's say number 1. 31st number. I will convert this to integer because I want it in integer. I have demonstrated this one before in my first class. Oh. Yeah, please. You might not necessarily type now, but I want you to get the logic. Most important, just type Google Colab on your website, and you'll be here. But you don't necessarily have to type along with me. But just understand what I'm doing. I want you to really be able to understand this so that we'll be able to do it independent of me later. So I will continue now. Please, can you help check it? Yeah. So let me just continue. So the first, I have used this particular statement before in the first class. If I want to receive input from the user, I'm going to say print. Print is to prompt the user. And the reason why I put integer at the front, I hope you are with me. And the reason why I put integer at the front is because I told you that print will give back a string. If a user type 5, it's not going to be 5 as a number. It's going to be 5 in inverted comma. That's why I put that int at the front. And that int is a data type called integer. That means I'm converting what is typed as a string to integer. So I would like to move on now. So I will request for the second number, number 2. And I will do the same thing. I would just like to copy. I'm sorry. Let me just copy it so that I will save time with that. Let me just copy this. Then I will change this from, is this the same prompt? Then I will do the same thing for number 3. Yeah. So I've requested for the 3 digits, which are the variables that I want to compare. That's the first step. So I'm just going to implement. I'm just going to, yeah. What did I put there? That must have been a mistake. There's no comma here. There's no comma here. This statement is inside comma. So if I print this out, let me print it. You will see what it's going to give me. It's going to give me a prompt. And yeah, come on. Argument is missing string, no data type. Enter the first integer. What is it saying now? I am giving the wrong command here. I'm going to write input. Yeah, if you want to collect something from user, we don't use print. We use input. I have forgotten. So let's say this is going to get input is to ask user for something when you want to ask or prompt user for an item. Print is to print out something to the screen. Print is different. You are just printing what is already in the computer memory to the screen. That's the mistake I made. Then I'm going to change this to input. I made a mistake. It's normal. Input. If I'm too slow, let me know. But I just want you to know it. I might be faster than this. So, of course, this is going to request for let's say this 3. You're high. Enter the first number. 2, 5, 6. Yeah, requested for number, then I put that there. So that's the first thing. That's the first thing that I am to do. I'll go on now, but I hope you are with me. If it's not clear, let me know. So the next thing is to implement this logic. So let's assume that I have gotten the 3 numbers that I want to compare. Then the next thing is to find a way to use this logic to compare them. So I will say the first condition is that, okay, let me have the first condition. If the number one, just as I wrote there, if it is less than number 2, and at the same time, number 1 is going to be less than number 3, which are the inputs that is given to you. You don't necessarily have to type, but I just want you to follow along. If this 2 condition is true, which is going to make the 2 sides of the equation to be true, because we are using AND. So the 2 sides have to be true before you have true at the end of the day. So if this condition is true, we talked about condition in our last class, and that is the if statement that I'm using here. If this is true, then you can print number, I can say F, number 1 is the smallest. But this might also not be the case, as we have explained there. It can be the second number, the second number might be the lowest or the third number. So we just repeat this for the second. Yeah.
So after you already enter 4, 5, 6, so how do you move to that the second one?
You can go to this code block. You can add another code block here.
Code block.
Just type it. It's going to go there. So I can just repeat this statement. I'm just going to copy now to save time, but I'll just change the variable. Make sure you are following. This is going to take a lot of time, but it's because I'm just starting out with you. I might be faster next time, but I don't know. So the second, I have to change something here. Pay attention. I'm not starting with the first number again. I'm going to the second number, which is number 2. Number 2 is less than number 1. And number 2 again is less than number 3. Then I'll do the same thing. Then you can say number, you have to change this one too. This one is going to be number 2 is the smallest. Then I'm going to write for the third one the same thing. Then this is number 3 is lesser than number 2, yes, and number 3 can be lesser than number 1, and we have this. So let's test our code and see if it's going to give us the right number. Are we together? Yeah. So let's test our code. So you can just add this. Oh, that's a very bad way. Okay. I have not changed this one to number 3. After you have changed the logic, make sure you put inside the printing box the right smallest number. Do you understand? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm coming. After you have changed the logic here, the condition here, make sure in this bracket you are putting the value that you think is the smallest. The value that is smallest here is number 1. The one that is smallest here is number 2. The one that is smallest here is number 3. Is that clear? I'm coming. Let me just run the code first. 4 is not the smallest. Number 3 is less than number 2, and number 3 is less than number 1. Number 3 is less than number 1, whatever, it's still the same thing. Number 3 is less than number 2. Number 3 is the smallest. Number 2 is the smallest. Yeah, I think it's correct. I'm thinking of something else. So, yeah, that's the smallest. 4 is the smallest. We can check another number. We can start from the beginning again. And we give me 3 numbers. I'm coming. Said. So let's try another number. Give me number that you want me to put. Give me numbers. Those ones are close. Let me use minus. Let me use 90. Let me use minus 10 again. So let's see if it knows the smallest here. Of course, that's correct. Minus 10 is less than minus 1, according to number line. So that's just the demonstration of this basic principle. But this code, it's kind of weird. It's very verbose. It's very long. I can have a very simpler, shorter code that will do the same thing. But the reason why I have to demonstrate with this is because I want you to just think through just normal comparison of the digits. So your question now.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. The first one is, I noticed that when you want to put number, like you said, number 2, no space. And for all other things, there's space. Like
I don't understand you.
Number 2.
The number 2 here, the second condition.
Yes, normally if you want to write on Power keyboard, so you put number space 2.
No.
So that you combine it together.
Because look at the first instruction. I labeled it as number 1. That number 1 is a variable. The way I have typed it up there. The way I typed this number 1. Look, this number 1 is a variable. The way you type it here is the way you will use it here. Because it is this one that you are using here. If you are to put space, you are going to put underscore. You can't put space between variable. Variable has to be one name. If you are to put space, I can write it like this too. I can say this is number 1. This is correct. But you cannot say this is number. That was what we dealt with in variable last week. You can't say this is number 1. We are not writing English. We are writing Python. So if you are to put space, make sure you put underscore to join them together. It has to be one word. Any other question?
My question regarding the number after.
Which one?
Yeah, the bracket.
This one?
Yeah, the bracket is different from the one with this.
Yeah, I explained this in last class.
Enter the first number, which is normal bracket.
Okay.
Again, now we now need another.
Yeah, I was talking about this in last class. This one is a form of printing. It is used for printing. As in, this one helps us regulate how the output will be given to us. Now, anytime you use these curly braces, it has to be used with this figure. They call it formatting string. So you have to use this. This F is the one that made us use it like this. And anything you are putting inside this formatting string, inside these curly braces, it is a value. It's not going to print. It's not going to be printed as number 1. It's going to print what is inside number 1. Number 1 is a variable. According to your input here, your number 1 is -1. Do you understand what I'm saying? So anytime you are putting this inside the curly braces, it is the value that will be given back to you. Don't forget that when we have a print, normally print will give us this string back. Do you understand what I'm saying? Don't get confused. But if you want to print something out and you want that number to be returned to you, you will use this F and you use this inside a curly braces. That's just it. So I would like to move on. The reason why I want to demonstrate is because I want you to follow along. If you have any question, please ask. And if it is complicated, let me know too. But I would like to move on now. This code I said is very verbose, it's very long. I can have a very simpler logic to solve the question. So let me demonstrate that. And you might be the one coding that to yourself. Now, let's demonstrate that. Please, let's pay attention. So let's say that I don't want to use this very long logic to bring out minimum number. As we have seen it here, we know how to get minimum out of the 3 numbers. But there is one thing that you will notice, that minimum number can only be 1. It's either 1 is minimum, or 2 is minimum, or 3 is minimum. You cannot have more than 1 number to be minimum. Is that right? So it means that we are storing something inside something. We are storing something inside a bag. If this one is minimum, store it in a bag. Then give it back to me. If this one is minimum, store it in a bag. So that concept of bag, we have to think about variable. It means that we are storing the minimum inside variable. Okay. So we can say that, okay, if you are given the 3 numbers that we have already been given, then let's assume. In mathematics, most times, if you want to make a proof, you are going to have an assumption first. So if I want to solve this type of question next time, then I will say, okay, let me assume that the first letter that I will get is the minimum. Then I will say, minimum is the first letter. Let's say first number. I want to solve it another way. First number. You are given 3 numbers. And I want to solve this question in another approach. Instead of writing 3 if statement, then I will only use one condition to represent this 3 statements. 3 if statement. This is what I will do. I will say, if I've been given the first number, I'm also giving the second number as variable, as value, sorry. I'm also giving the third number as value. So we are giving all this. Then we will assume that the first number is minimum. That means I have stored it inside a variable, a bag. Then we will not do the condition that you are doing here. If the second number now, if the second number is less than the minimum, what has been stored in the minimum? What do you have in the minimum here? What I have in the minimum is the first number. That means you are already comparing, you are already here. You are already comparing the second number with the first number. And the second number, I would like to write it there. That place will not contain. Second number, if it is also less than the third number, You put full colon there. So this is the only condition you will write now. If these two conditions is correct, then change what we have inside this variable. The minimum, then you store what? Which one is the second one? Based on the logic we have established here, then I will now switch it with what? What will I now put in the minimum now? If these two conditions are true. Second number, of course, based on what we have done here. Second number. Then you can now print minimum. Minimum is just put second number. We would want to implement this now. Just, we have been given the first, second, and third number already. I don't want to do it for you. So, the logic that you just have to write is this. If the second number, which is number 2 there, is less than the minimum. Don't forget that the first thing you will do, you write it now. The first thing you will do is that store your first number, number 1, store it in a variable minimum. After you have done that, you don't need to write all this one now. I'm just demonstrating here. After you have done that, then write this condition. If the second number is less than the first number, and the second number, which is number 2, is less than the third number, then store it inside it. Then outside the if statement, then you now print minimum second number.
So if the second number is less than minimum,
yeah.
Or first number?
The first number has been stored inside minimum.
Okay.
It has been stored inside. So type it.
Is less than minimum, and the second number is less than the third number.
Yes, it's more or less that you are doing this comparison. You are only doing this comparison now. Instead of writing 3, you are only doing one of them. Yeah, so you are now changing what has been stored, because I've told you a variable can only hold one thing. You are reassigning what has been stored in the minimum. You are changing it to second number because it has to meet these two conditions. Please type now. Just type. Just need to do this first, then do this. Then use this print. Type. Let me see. Spend a lot of time there. So let's continue with the lecture. And I'm going to be moving a little bit faster now. So if you need more practice, I will advise that you practice at home. But you have to just practice for you to get hold of it. So let's move to data structure. So data structure is different from variable. As you can see in this example, variable store only one item. For us to print out the minimum of 3 numbers that we are comparing, we are printing it or we are storing it in a variable. So that variable can only hold one item at a time, according to what we have explained last week. But now we want to move to a more complex data structure, which is called, some of them are called list, tuple, and set, dictionary included. This data structure is more complex because it can hold more than one item at a time. Variable can only hold one thing at a time. Minimum can only store either the first number or the second number or the third number. But when it comes to data structure like list, for instance, it can hold 2 numbers at a time or 3 numbers at a time. That's the difference. We are going to demonstrate this with code. I think I will just write the code myself. So let's go to now. To get a better picture of data structure, we have 2 data structures that we are going to be demonstrating today. We have what we call list and dictionary. But for now, let's explain what a list is. This is a pictorial representation of what a list is. List is like a rectangular shape item. You can see that in this shape, we have these are the elements in the list. The elements are 11, 3, and so on. Now, each of these elements, they are stored in a very ordered manner. Number 11 is stored in index 0. The meaning of index is the position they are stored in. So, items that are stored in list, number 1 is that they are stored in ordered manner. It means that the first item you put in the list is going to be in the first position, and the first position in a list is starting from number 0, not number 1 in mathematics. Item in list, they are orderly. The first item we put in the list will always be in the first position, and the first position of the list is not 1, it is starting from 0. Then you can see the positive indices. The position of item in the list is called indices or index or indices, sorry. Then you can see their position. 1 is, 11 is in position 0, followed by 3, position 1, and so on and so forth. That one is positive position or positive indices. Now, the same position can also be represented in the negative direction. If I'm starting from the last element now, which is element 15, this element 15 has its position to be the last position, and last position is -1 in index. Then you can go through that negative direction to get the next index if you are counting from the back, which is negative position. This picture is very important when we start introducing or start using it to code. So let's move on. So the next thing that I think is also important for us to have the pictorial representation of is the methods that are used in list to manipulate the elements in the list. These are some of the common methods that are used. The first one is append. We have 2 burgers and 1 plantain and chips, sorry. Then the meaning of that append is that you are adding elements to the list that you have seen, the rectangular shape. If you are adding element to the list, it is normally added to the back of the list, the back, like the -1, which is the last item position. So I'm adding element to the back now, so that item is placed at the back of the chip. Then you can also have count as a method to count the number of elements in the list. Then you can see that this returns 2. The reason why it returns 2 is because it's counting from 0, not 1. So it's going to count 0, 1, 2. Then it goes to copy. You are just copying element in the list. We have index of a particular item. I am putting chip. What position is that chip in the list? And that is 0, 1, 2. It returns 2. Reverse is a method that changes the position of the item in the list. Remove, you are removing a particular item. Insert, you are inserting item in a particular position. Pop removes item from the back of the list. Because when you had item, which is append, you remove from the back too. That is pop. Pop is to remove.
I have a question. The append and the pop, so because I don't understand the last time when we have burger and chips. So when we are moving at the back, we should move chips, not
you have removed chips. That's why you are still left with burger, 2 burgers.
No. We have pop and pop. We have 2 pop left.
Each of the methods are independent. They are describing, it's like you are describing the method independent of themselves.
So maybe pop 1 and pop nothing.
Okay, pop 1. Pop 1 is that you want to remove at a particular position, which is index 1.
Okay.
But if you use pop without any value, it's going to remove from the back.
Okay.
So index 1 is removing the second item, 0, 1. That is the second burger.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. We might use some of them in code. But let's move on. So let's try to, this question are a little bit complex, but I will solve it. But I just want us to follow along as I solve it. We are going to use the concept that we just explained now to solve the 2 questions. So the first question is saying that some investment advisors say that it is reasonable to expect a 7% return over the long term in the stock market. Assuming that you begin with $1,000 and leave your money invested, calculate and display how much you will have after 10, 20, and 30 years. You are using the compound formula, if you are familiar with that. Compound interest formula. Okay, so let's try and look at this question together. We will just interpret it together, then I will code it out. Now, we are told that you are advised, or the investor advised you that you should have an investment, and you expect 7% return. If you are familiar with that 7% return rate is called interest rate. When you put money in the bank, it's either you are paid an interest at a particular rate, or you pay an interest to the bank at a particular rate. That is if you borrow money from the bank. So that 7%, we call it rate. So I'll just add that as a variable now, variable rate, 7% can be written as 0.07. Do you know how I got this? That is 7 over 100, and that is 0.07. So that's the first variable or constant, I would say, that we are giving here. So the second thing is that, assuming that you begin with $1,000, what does that mean? The meaning of that is that you, as an investor, you are putting $1,000, and that is called principal in commercial arithmetic language. So we have that money that you put in, we call it principal, and that is 1,000. That is the money. So the next thing is that you leave your money invested, you leave it there, and you have to calculate how much that is called amount that you will get if you are leaving your money for 10, if you are leaving your money for 20, or you are leaving your money for 30 years. So the first thing is that we have 3 years we are considering. We are considering if it is 10, 20, or 30. So it's more or less that we have 3 values that we want to consider. So we can think of a way to put the value in a particular data structure. And the data structure we can use now is the one we have just learned now, which is list. So we can store item, and this one represents years. Because we are storing 3 items, we can add them in 10, 20, 30. So we have 3 items. So I have told you that data structure that are not variable, you can use it to store more than one item. So we are representing list in Python. We normally use square bracket, square. Anytime you use square bracket, you are indicating that this is a list. A list can store more than one item at a time. You are just separating it with comma. So we are using this formula, which is amount is equals to principal, and you can use P here. Let's use P so that it will be consistent. Principal 1 plus R raised to power N. So let's code this up now. I'll just use it. But before we code it up, let's think through. If I want to calculate this amount, I have to calculate it for year 10, year 20, year 30. It means that I'll be repeating the calculation for 3 times. So the first thing I have to know is that I have to use a kind of loop, because I am repeating an action of calculation more than one time. So that's the first thing. So if I'm using loop, it means that, okay, I will say I am looping based on the number of years. So the loop is going to be going through years. So I can now say for year in years. This statement is going to go through each of the elements in the list year, because it is this year that will determine the change in the amount that I'm going to be paying. Anytime you are writing Python code, be very careful that every alphabet, none of them, you are not writing English. So in your English, you say you start the first letter with capital letter. We don't do that in Python. All of them must be in small letter. And if you are writing a condition, this statement is a conditional statement. For year in, it's not actually condition, it's a loop statement, of course. So for year in years, you can see me putting full colon here. It is very important. Then, what do I want to do? What I want to do is just calculate the amount that I will get each year. It means I'm just going to be implementing this amount formula each of the years. Then I can say amount is equal to what? Principal. In this case, let me say it is P. I'll just write 1 plus R. If you want to write power in Python, it is 2 asterisk raised to power. The N here is what? Year. Hope you understand. The number of year here, then you just write year. If you put this out, then you print. You are done. Print amount for, I would like to have it like this. Amount for year is going to print the first year that we have here. The first year is 10. Amount for 10 years is amount. That is this amount that you have calculated here. So you're going to print the first amount for 10 years by raising it to power 10. Then you're going to print the second amount for the second year. So let's implement that so that we see what is.
Is it comma there, comma and inverted?
Yeah. Let me just implement it. So let's see. We are giving years. We are giving rates. Let me first add my rate. My rate is what? 0.07. Then I have my principal. I'm writing it in full. Oh, I think I made a mistake here. 0.07. Then the principal is 1,000. You are keeping 1,000 in the bank. Then what's the next thing? Then I'm giving the formula for amount. No, I don't need that here. I will use it inside. Then I have years. So because we have 3 years, we can put them in a list. Then we have 10, we have 20, we have 30. So these are the 3 years that we have. So we want to use loop to go through each of the years. So for year, you can see the spelling of my year. This one is different from this. This one has S. This one does not have S. The first one, this one doesn't have X. It's a different variable from years. This years with S is representing this list. Don't get it confused. Or I can just use another variable so that you will not be confused. I can say for number in years so that you know that there are 2 different variables. Are you following me?
Yes.
Make sure you are following. So for number in years is a condition, put the full colon there. Then I want to implement the formula of amount. Then you just say amount, I'm calculating amount, and the amount is P, principal. The principal that I initiated up there, principal times your multiplication times 1 plus the R that I have there is rate. So I'm going to have rate, which is my variable. So are you following?
Yeah,
so then we have raised to power year, and the year is number. Then when you are done with that, you have calculated the amount. Then I want to print out. If you are printing, go out of the for loop. That's why I put my cursor outside the for loop. Then I'm going to be printing. I'm using the formatting string, printing amount for year. I'm sorry, it's not year now. It's going to be number. Amount for number, because I want that to print amount for 10 years and so on. Then years is go out of this and put the value you will get after you have calculated your amount. Any question? Just want the code. Hopefully I will not make mistake. It's normal if I make mistake. Okay, I got you. No problem. So I should print out the amount for each year, and there is something here that I want to change. Okay. Yeah. Don't worry, I got an error here. So let me put my amount inside. I will have my curly braces. I will say amount. I'm going to use something complex again. Dot 2F. I'll tell you what this means. I'm coming. So I want the amount to be printed for each year. So my print statement should not be outside the for loop. Because if it is outside the for loop, it's just going to print the amount for the last year. Look at the amount that is printed here. Take note of this. This is 7,621. You see that is going to be the amount for the 30th year, 30 year. Let's see. But now it's going to print it for the 10 years, for the 20 years, and what? That's 30 years. Is even there.
Why is it 30 years first? Okay.
So the amount for 10 years is this amount, and I put this one, this symbol, is to make sure that the number of decimal place is not more than 2. This is the way we write it. It's somehow complex. It doesn't matter. You might not use it. You might just ignore it because you're just starting out. But it means that I'm trying to restrict the decimal place
the number of value at the back of the decimal point to 2. And you can see that this is 10 years, amount for 20 years, and amount for 30 years. Now, question. Notation that I use now, you might just ignore it and just print out your value. Okay, print it out like that. It doesn't matter. You are just starting out. Just print it out. It does not matter. But I'm just writing because I've done it separately. So, any question?
You pass.
I have used the concept of list that I just explained now. I have used the concept of list that I can use it to keep more than one item at a time. And because I want to print amount for each year, then I'm going to loop through it. When you see question, you might not necessarily know the answer, but at least your logic should point to something that you know that you can use to solve the answer. Even if you are going to get the solution from ChatGPT or anywhere, you should be able to read the code and have some sense of, oh, I understand what this is talking about. Let me just go through this again because of the great interpretation. Connection, whatever. So we are trying to establish build a mathematics table, and we are familiar with mathematics table. It normally have rows and column. So it is this number of rows and column that we use to establish the product or the values in the table. So we have a question that says that, oh, I don't have the question. We have a question that says that, okay, the user is going to give you the length of the row that it wants to print and the length of the column. Then we can have a multiplication table to give us the values inside the table without the rows and the column. That's the question. Then what I did was that, okay, since we have this type of question, we have table. Anytime you have table, we normally use two-dimensional data structure to represent it. And that means that we are using something like array, it's not array, list that has another list inside it. That is the way we do table in Python. And what I did is that this column is a list. You put it inside square bracket. This row is also a list. You put it inside square bracket. And that is the representation that we have here. Now, each of the elements or each of the value in the rows can now be put inside square bracket on their own as list. And that's what we did here. Row 1 has item in each of the columns. Don't forget that item in list start from 0. So this item is in 0. Sorry. This item now, if I want to mention, I want to label the position of this item. This is item in row 0, colon 0. This is item in row 0, colon 1. This is item in row 0, colon 2. That's the way we label it. Then you do this, it's like matrices if you have done matrices before. But anyway, that's just what happens to each of the items. Now, let's now assume that I don't know the number of values that I want to have in each rows. Then I said that you are going to put for each item in the row, you put none, like none. None in Python, it means that I don't know what is there. I don't know what will be there. It might be a number of 2 or 3, or it might be a string, I don't know. So none, and that is what we use this to represent. Now, there is something that we have to do for us to build this table. The first thing is that the outer square bracket, it can be represented with a list. So this is an empty list. And that's what I did here. Then I said that you will collect the number of row, which is row that we have here, 1, 2, 3. You will collect it from the user. You will collect the number of column from the user. Then when you are done collecting the 2, then I want to create this structure that will keep the item in there. Then you are going to use for loop because I want to repeat an action. Then use for I is a variable. In range, I told you what range means. Range means that you want the value to go between a particular range of value. And I said that the reason why I'm using range here is because row is a constant. So when you have a constant, you cannot loop through a constant. You cannot loop through a constant. You have to have something that is loopable, so to speak. Something you can loop through. So constant is not loopable in quote. So you have to use this range so that it's going to create a structure that will look like number line so that you'll be able to loop through. And that's why we have this range. And don't forget that this range normally starts from 0. Every number in Python that you are counting starts from 0, not 1. Then, so the first thing is that I want to put inside this table, I want to put this none. This none is also inside a a list, and that's what I did here. But the number of items inside the list will be repeated based on what? The column size. And that's why we have this here. Then I demonstrated by saying that if I have none multiplied by 2, none inside a square bracket, which is a list, multiplied by 2, it means that this none is going to be repeated twice. If I have 2 inside a square bracket of list, multiplied by 3, it means that this value 2 is going to be repeated 3 times. And that's what happens there. So I want to implement this in code now. So let's have the first instruction. We have row, we have column. Then I will change it. Enter the number of row, enter the row number, then enter the column number. So enter the row number, enter the column number. This is used to, as we have written this before, please just concentrate. You don't need to type, you might be distracted. Enter the row number, enter the column number. We have written this before in our code. So the next thing we do is that we have gotten the number of row and the number of column, which will be the dimension of our table. Then the next thing is that we have to get our empty table, as we can see there. Then you can say table is equal to an empty list. Okay? Empty list. Okay, like the outer one. Then we want to loop through it to get the structure that we have there. Then we have for what? High. I'm just using I here. You can use none, you can use anything, but we use I in this case. You can use I. For I in range row. I've told you why we have to go through row. Row is the horizontal labeling. For high in range row, then I will be putting table dot append. Append is used to add value at the back of the list. So we are appending none, and we are repeating the elements, that none, based on the what? Column that you have. So we are going to print this out now to see what it's going to give us. Now let's say we print table to see our results. Let's see if we don't have any mistake. Let's say 3. Let's say 3. Then we have that. Let's reduce the number from 3 to 2. Let's say we have 2. We have 2. Then we have that too. You can see the structure that we have there is what we have now. So I would like to continue. So that is just the first thing to be done. We have not, done this multiplication that we want. So let's do this multiplication now. So we have already created our structure, but we have put in the structure none. That is not our multiplication table. So we want to put in our table. I have cleaned that one out. We want to put in our table the multiplication of each of the items. I'll write it again. Okay, yeah, I have this. So we want to put this item that we have here, we want to put it inside our table that has none for now. We have none, and that's not what we want. So let's have it. So the next thing is that, okay, we still want to have multiplication of each of the rows and columns. For each number, we are going to be having multiplication of row by column. This number is represented with this. So we have that product. And we are going to be repeating this action more than once. We are going to do it for this, do it for this, do it for this. So if you are repeating any action more than once, then use for loop. But don't forget that I said that you use for loop if you know the number of times you want to repeat action. If you don't know the number of times, you use while loop. But I said for your level, just stick to for loop because you might not be doing something complex now. So let's have our for loop. The same for loop that I wrote just now, I can just say for J to differentiate it from I so that you will not be confused. For J in range row, I've told you why I use range. But this time around, I also need my column. I also need to be going through my columns. I'm not only going to be going through rows, I want to be going through columns because I have to be multiplying each number in the row with each number in the column. So I have to use another for loop to represent the change in the position of column. So I will now say for I want to use something else. I want to use I, sorry. For I in range, then the colon. So I'm going through row. The meaning of this statement is that, look at this statement very well. You can see that this for loop is inside this one. When you look at your table, row 1 is going to be going through column 1, column 2, and column 3. You will see that column is changing, but row is going to remain constant for the column that changes. Do you understand what I've just said now? The column, for if the row is 1, for row 1, the column will go from 1, 2, 3. So before you go to the next row, the column will have finished. That is why this 4 colon is inside the 4 row. It is inside, based on this indentation. Do you understand? It might be a little bit complex, but let's just move on. You will get it. So for I in range colon, each of the colon is going to be going through it. Now, let's say if the row is row 0 now, and the colon is colon 0 now, which is row 0, colon 0. Then for this colon 0, before it goes, it's going to move to colon 1, colon 2, and colon 3. So what do we want to do? We want to do this product. And in this product, we want to store this product inside our table. We already have our table in the first output. Then our table, don't forget that your table is containing each of these items. Don't forget that each of these items has what we call row and column number. This number 1, I demonstrated it the other time. Number 1 is number 1 in row 0, colon 0. Number 2 is in row 0, colon 1. In matrices, we have it as A, row, colon. Like this matrix, this 2, 3, 4, 5 matrix, for instance. So this 2 is found in, this is the first row, row 0, colon 0. This 3 is in 3, row 0, colon 1. This 4 is in 4, row 0, colon 0. I mean, sorry, row 1, colon 0. Yeah. This one is in row 1, colon 1. Do you understand? So these 2 digits is what I will use to represent each element in the table. Like, the first item is going to be the row. Let me change this one to row and colon. Okay, it doesn't matter. So that you just understand what I'm doing. But this might be confusing for you. Let me use IJ. IJ. It doesn't matter. So, look at this thing that I'm having here. Then I'll represent it with, this is row. We are in the first row. Another square bracket. This is colon. We are in the first column. Then I want to change the element in this first row and first column with the product. It means that I want to multiply I times J. But there is one thing that we also have to put into consideration. If I multiply I times J here, this is going to be, the first element that will be returned here is what? 0, right? Because it's going to start from row 0, right? Multiply by colon 0, right? 0 times 0. We don't need 0 to be represented in our multiplication, right? So in that case, I have to shift this by 1. Shift this by 1. Don't start from 0, start from 1. Are you following?
Okay.
Are you following?
Mm-hmm.
Is this little is overwhelming?
It's fine.
Okay. Okay. That's just what will happen. So when we are done with the first one, this is going to print out and we can print our table. Let's just implement this and see what happens. So let's have what are we having? So let's have another for loop. For I in range row again. For J in range column again. So the next thing is that, okay, I have my table already. So I will say table, put your I, which is the first element in your table, J matrices. Then you are going to have I plus 1 multiplied by j plus 1. Don't forget, put this in brackets so that you will save it. True. So let me print out the table to see what we have. If we have let's see if this will work as we expected. Yeah, it was as expected. It's just not printing out what we want. So the first loop, or I can just bring it out. I don't need that. I can just bring it out. Yeah, of course. I have my value. I'm using 2 rows and 2 columns now. Okay, let me change it to 3. Let me change so that you will see what I am doing here. Let me change it to 3. So let's say we have 3 rows and 3 columns. Then we have each of the rows. Each of the rows, you can see this is number 1, 2, 3. Then the second row is 2, 4, 6. And the third row is 3, 6, 9. Is that okay? That's what we have. And we are doing that. So let's now go to the last step. And the last step is that we want to print it out in a well-formatted manner. Instead of having, you know, we have list. We have each of them in a list. So we have each of them in a list like that. So we want to print out items that are in 2-dimensional list. 2-dimensional list. So how do we print it out? We use the same concept. This is a list, a row. Each of them represents a row for high in range row. For j in range colon. Then you can print. Can just print. Don't forget that you are printing item in your table. That is I, which we have already stored. We stored our item here. So we just want to print it out using the 2 for loop, high, j, and that will give us the value that we want. Then you can just say, okay, print. I will tell you what I'm doing here. So let me just run it and let's see what happens. So I'm writing another for loop. I'm writing a lot of for loop. Don't mind me. I can have it better than this, but that might be complex for you to understand. Range row for j in range colon. Okay, so I want to print my table. You are not printing the content in your table I, your j. Then if I print it like this, let's see what happens. This is colon, not colon. I use colon. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, you can see it printing on a just single line, and that is not very good to our view. So let's have it printing. After it has completed the first row, you should go to the next line to have it like that. Then that's where I will now put this print below, outside the first for loop, because after that first for loop, they are going to complete the colon. The colon will have been completed to the third colon, then go. If it's going to the next step, just print an empty space, an empty print. Then that's the purpose of this. Then it's going to have it printed in a well. Come on. I'm coming. Okay, let me do this. You are making me.
Can just look through the table.
Oh, that's the 1, 2, 3. Okay. I know what to do. Let me do this. Okay. Let me see if this will work. Yeah, work. So
What times?
Yeah, I want it to print on a single line. I don't want it to print on vertical line. I want it to print the first 3 items, the first column, the first 3 columns, column 1, column 2, column 3 on a single line. That hand make it possible for you for the output to be on a single line. Then you can see that print that I put below that first print is to give an empty space. That's the one taking it to the next line. See, if I remove this print now, let's see what happens. I see just printing everything on a straight line. Yes, then if I put it back, after it has completed the first 3 columns, then you're going to take the cursor to the next line to have it formatted in a very good way. So any question on this? This one is a little bit advanced, but we will be getting to more advanced concepts as we move forward. So I urge you, if you want to follow along as we move forward, if you have any gap in the first one, the previous one we have done, you can always check them out. I'm sure it will be clearer if you check them out yourself. So I think we have covered a lot, and I think we should be done. We should be done now, I guess. This is it there. Should we move on, or I think we should have to move on. Aljebra? Yeah, 5 minutes. 5 minutes. We cannot pen this till next week. Yeah. It's just one question. Yeah. So it's just one question. So the last aspect of the data structure that it is also very important for our data science or machine learning concepts is what we call dictionary. I'm only talking about these two data structure, list and dictionary, because they are the one that we'll be using most. Now, dictionary is used in your data set when you have two items that have relationship between them. For instance, now, if you want to store a name and you want to link it to a particular identity value, for instance, let me say my name is Ritwan, then I have my own special character ID, identification number, or let's just say something that have key value pair. In dictionary, it is used to keep items that are in pairs. As you can see in this symbol, in this picture, red in inverted comma, it represents a key that will be used to find a value, which is also a string, for instance. The statement reads, in a dictionary, values are paired with keys using the colon. Keys must be unique. The meaning of that is that you can't use this red, which is the key, you can't use it for another value. You can't use it as another key, sorry. Red cannot be used more than once. Red is the key has to be unique, and they have to be immutable data type. The meaning of immutable is that, example of immutable are string and numbers. The meaning of immutable is data type that cannot be changed. Number is constant. String in Python also is considered as constant. Okay? So if you are using any value as key, it has to be something that doesn't change. It is not a variable. It is not an iterable, for instance, a list, for instance. You can't use list as key, for instance. But you can use list as value. Okay? But a key cannot be changed multiple value. Dictionary are created using these curly braces, unlike list that is created using square brackets. We have used list extensively in our implementation. So we're going to have one implementation for this dictionary. You can see the picture, very clear representation of them. This is key, this is value. In between them, we have full colon to differentiate them. So let's have an implementation with a question. So let's have an implementation. The question says that given a grade book containing the names and scores of students in 3 subjects, create a calculator that will be used to evaluate the following. Okay? So let's assume that I'm already given the data. I'll just generate data for myself, and it's going to be in dictionary. Let's say we have grade book. I'm writing Python, so I can say grade book, this is a dictionary. Then we say, let's say we have Ayodele. That's the name. And we have 3 scores in 3 subjects. Let's say we have maths 90, 20, 40. This is a list. I'm putting a list inside dictionary because I'm saving 3 items, so I can put them inside that. Then we have another one. We have Kehinde. Then we can also have 3 scores. We have 100. We have 80. We have 77. This is the second child. Tanya, I don't know how to spell your name, but don't worry. I'm sorry if I butchered the name. 11, 25, 30. So my dictionary will be closed with these curly braces. I don't need to put comma here because this is the last one. So the question says we should find the total score for each student. It's very simple. This is each student. It means I want to find 90 plus 20 plus 40 for this student A, then 100 plus 80 plus 77 for this student B, and so on. That's what we want to do. But don't forget that these numbers, they are stored inside list. So you know that you have to use for loop, right? But before that, we are dealing with dictionary. Dictionary is also a form of iterable, just like list, that you are going to go through each item. In dictionary, it's more complex than list because dictionary has what we call key and value. All of this list is a value. So how do we go through a dictionary? Okay. We can go through a dictionary by saying for, we have key, we have value. If I want to get the key and value in the dictionary, in grade book dot items. There are 3 things that we use to go through to get value or item in a dictionary. We can use what we call item. This item is going to give us the key and the value. We can use what we call key. If I want to get only the key, I will say for key in gradebook dot keys. If I want to get only these names, if I want to get only the value, I can say for value in gradebook dot values. But I will not be using any of these. I will be using, I want to get the 2, I will be using items. So for key, I want to get the key, I want to get value. Do you understand? I have explained that we have 3 ways of getting item in a dictionary. We can use the keys function if we want to get only the keys. We can use the value function if we want to get only the value. But we want to get the 2, the key and value, then you have these 2 variables getting item. So that's the first thing. Then the next thing is that I want to add the value, which is this item together. Now, what I can do now is that this for loop is going through each of the items. It's not doing addition. For me to add it, because the value will be stored here. What we have here is a list. If I want to have this value added together, because it's a list, what do? We are going to use for loop, right? For loop to add each of the items together. That was what we have done. But I'm going to use another method that is a little bit faster instead of that. So let's assume that I have gotten the key, which is the first key is Ayodele. The first value is this value. Then I want to add, I can say student score, which is Ayodele in this case, is going to be equal to some value. This value is this list. Then if you're adding item in list together, instead of looping through them, you can just use this keyword, sum. It is small letter, it's not capital letter. Sum. Then you put value. It's going to give you the addition. So the first thing you want us to say is that calculate total score of each student. Then you can now say print student score, or you can say with 1 score, this one is going to be with one score. I'm using that string here. The key here is going to be the name of that person. Ayodele score is student total score, student score. Make a mistake here. What I'm just doing here is that I am putting the name of the student here and the score. This one is going to print Ayodele score is the addition that it has done here. Then it's going to do the same thing for the second student. Then it's going to do the same thing for the third student because of this for loop. Then I'm done with the first question. Then the second question says that as you find the average score for each student, what does average mean? Average is going to be total score of the student. Total score of the student divided by the total number of score. Student total score. Student total all over total grades or something. Okay. This we have to introduce another variable. So each of the students, their score is this. Their total score is this. It means that I'm going to be adding 90 plus 20 plus 40 divided by 3, right? Divided by the length of the element in this array, right? In this list. So I can get the total score of students. The student average score, I can say print. I can say average score. Time too long. Average score of students is going to be the addition of this score, which is student score here, which is the sum, student score divided by, in list, there is a way to calculate all the elements in the list, and that is length. The length of elements in the list. The length of what? Value. Do you understand what I did here? This value is the list. So it's going to return this as a list. So I'm calculating all the total score. The total score is already stored here. Then I'm dividing it with the length, the item, which is 3. And that's going to give us the average score of that particular student. Is that clear? You can look at it later. Then I can print also average score of that student, of the student. I will write it away later. So average score of the student, then you put this average score there. Then finally, this one is a little bit tricky, but let's try and do it. Average score of the whole class now. We are now interested in the average score of the whole class, not the students again. Now, it means that I'm going to add each of these scores of the student together, add everything, then divide it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the total score. So to find that, we are going to have two variables that will keep total score outside any of the loop, call it 0, total grade. I can't explain, like, there's no time again. So total score and total grade, because each of the score now, after this for loop is done with this student score, then add everything together, which has been added with this variable. Everything has been summed with this variable, 90 plus 20 plus 40. Then I want to sum that total in the total score. Then I can now say total score, okay, equals to total score. I don't want to use a shortcut. Total score plus student score. What am I doing here is that Aljebra score now, which is the total Aljebra score, which is 90 plus 20 plus 40. Add it together and add it inside total score. Total score was initialized to 0 because we want it to be adding. So if it's done with the first child, the first student, add it here. Then it's going to go to the second student, 100, 80, 77. Then it's going to add it to this total score again. So the total score is a variable. It will be changing the number in them by adding everything together. Do you understand?
Yeah, sure.
It's a little bit, but of course you can get why it is. So that's for the total score. Then the total grade, I'm done. Then the total grade is also going to be the same thing. Total grade, which was initialized to 0, plus. Now, the total grade that we have here, how do you get total grade of each student? It is learn value. It is that one that you will pack together to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then learn value. Then with these two that I have gotten, then I can now say the average, or you say total average, or whatever you want to call it, total average, which is average of the whole class, is going to be total score divided by total grade. There's a reason why I did not put this total, this total average, there's a reason why I did not put this total score and total grade inside this for loop. There's what we call global variable and local variable in programming. The meaning of local is that this total score, it is inside this for loop. it is a variable that will not be seen outside this for loop. You cannot call this total score outside this for loop. The meaning of outside is that this particular statement, it is outside this for loop like this. It is not, it has no business with this for loop. But anything that is indented, it is inside the for loop. So any variable you grade inside that for loop is a local variable. It means that when that body, when it has expired, then the variable will be destroyed. But the reason why I have to grade this one outside is because the total score is something that will be updated for the whole school. There's a lot of explanation behind it, but that's just what's going to happen. If you want me to code it, I can code it. If not, time has passed, then we can just go home. So which one do you prefer? Code it. Let me just code it if you are not contesting that. So let me just code it up. This is what happens. I'll be a little bit fast. So let's just have gradebook. So we have Ayodele, then you have full colon, then we have 2, 21, 190. I will just copy this ahead. Ayodele, doesn't matter. This one doesn't matter. Don't forget your comma here. I have to put comma here, or else I'll get that error that I'm getting now. Then I have to do this. Then can change the. You must not use the same name. Can use Kayode. You can use Wafia here. Then you can change their score if you want. You can say this is 80. And you can change this one to 72. So that's just the data set we are giving. So let's code it up. Then we can have total score. I've told you what we use this one for. You initialize it to 0. You can have total grade. You initialize this one to 0. Then we have, you want to go through the dictionary for key value inside the dictionary grade book dot items, which will give us the value we want. Correct. So we have, we want to calculate the score of each student. Student score, student score. That's equals to, is it length that I use? Sum. Use sum. Then you have the value which is going to be returned as the list that will be returned there. You have the value there. That's going to give us the total score of the student. Then let's print out that to be sure. You can say with one score or something. That's going to be the key, which is the name of the student score. You do a total score is, then you put the student score there as the variable. Then we do the same thing for the average. Why did I indent that? I wrote rubbish there. So anyway, average score of that particular student. You don't have to indent it. I make a mistake there. So average score of that particular student is going to be the student's score, the score of that particular student divided by the length of the items in the list. We have 3 items. That's divided by 3. Then we have it to be value here, because that is a list on its own. Then we will print that out to see our result. Then we can say print f. Let me just copy. I am lazy now to type. So let me just copy this. I will just copy this and put it here. So we have the total average, average score. Average score is not student score, it is average score. So I've done the 2. I can put it out to see, but let me just do the last one because of time constraint. So the last one is, before you go out of the loop, you have to accumulate the score of each student. So this is going to be total score variable that you have created up there. There is no, let me use this. Let me just write it the way I've written it. Then we have total score plus the first value that I put in that total score is 0. Then it's going to be added to the score of that particular student, which is student score here. That's going to accumulate the score of each of the students in that particular case. So we have what we call the total grade that I have as a variable here. They're going to do the same thing. The shorter way of writing that is this. The shorter way of writing the one at the top is this. Then we have what we call the len of value in the list, which is 3. Then it's going to be adding that together. Then at the end of the day, I would like to print total average, total class average, or whatever. Total class average is, and I can have what did I have there? I can have total score. The value on that total score must have increased, must have changed from 0 to the cumulative value, then total grade. Hopefully we will not have mistake. So I guess, yeah, it does the calculation and we got it. And then you can check it out if you want. Then I can change this to 2 decimal people. I said no problem with that, as we are just starting out. So you can check it with your calculator. It should be correct. And that's all. That was a very marathon way of, explaining. But you get the gist. But I will employ you. We are moving to something that might be a little bit complex, so that you will not be lost. You can watch the video again. You can read the material again, and so on and so forth. So finally, I think we are done. But I think we are left with something to show in the slide. We are done. So I think practicing is very important for programming. Very, very important. So I supplement this lecture with questions. For the topic we have covered so far, I have a repository that you can see the link. That's the link of the repository. You can go to the repository and try to solve the question that we have solved before. New questions, not the one we have solved before. And also, don't forget that apart from this repository, all the solutions to the code that I've just given to you, they can be found on the blog. Let me quickly show you that. They can be found in the blog. So that you in case you are the solution is not clear to you, I want to go through the solution. The code I also explained in this blog. You can follow the code in this blog and try to understand it yourself. It's very important you practice, because if not, there's no other way to know it. So if you have not followed very well, this is the blog. Go to the blog and you can catch up with the blog. Then I think finally, and when you are done with that, then you can now practice new questions. There are just three questions on each of the topic. With this particular repository, I will share the link to the repository directly with Rafia. So I think if you also want to catch up with me, I think I just built my website some days back. You can also check that out if you want. But most importantly, the blog, for you to go through the solution that we have done, we are somehow fast. And then the blog and the other one that I mentioned, forgotten. So thank you for coming, and I hope you try to practice on your own. That will be all.